Hello everyone, this is the Adobe Illustrator demo, and this demo we're gonna go over the basics of Adobe Illustrator and all the functions that you need to successfully complete the first project. So let's get started. So Adobe Illustrator it looks like this, and the icon for the Adobe Illustrator is this orange letter with A and I. So let's click that and open it up. And schools computer labs have Photoshop and Illustrator installed to it. If you can't find it, you can always go there and then try to look for it. And usually it's on the letter A section right there. Okay, so once you pull up the Adobe Illustrator, we're going to create a new file, new canvas. That's what Adobe Illustrator calls it. To start drawing and creating visual elements to it. So to create new, you can always hit the create new right here, or you can always go to file and hit create new. Oh, not with template. New, and it's gonna prompt this new pop-up, and since we are only gonna be creating digital media that is intended to be shown on the computer screen, whether it be phone or tablet or computer. So we are going to go to web right here, and we're going to create a file. So you probably noticed that there's a pixels, there's a width and height. So we need to set a certain number of the pixel. So most the modern computer screen is usually around 2000 by 1000 pixels. So it is good practice to make a graphic slightly bigger than the intended viewing screen. So I'm gonna make it to say 3000 to 2000, so that even if someone were to zoom in a little bit, we don't lose any pixels. But in this case, Adobe Illustrator is made for creating vector image. We are not gonna be needing that much. So, and make sure that this is 3000 by 2000. Then we're gonna use RGB color. RGB is for the digital media that is intended to be shown on the display, and CMYK is intended to be media that is to be printed on a piece of paper or on a painted on things like that. And screen 72 ppi is a standard practice for the display medias, whereas for the printed media 300 or up is the minimum standard. So we're gonna stick with the 72 ppi and hit create. And now it's gonna create a canvas looking like this. So we don't need a tutorial, so I'm just gonna do that. And now this is the Adobe Illustrator. So if you look at it, on the left side we got all these tools. So this is all the tools that you can play around with. And on the top side, this is the top menus where it has file, edit, objects, and million different things that you really don't need to know. I've been using the Adobe Illustrator, and I've been teaching the Adobe Illustrator for 10 years and 5 years. I still only know maybe 5% of all this, but still I can do everything that I want. I can make anything that I want to make with Adobe Illustrator. So you don't really need to be intimidated by all these menus. So we just need to select a set of tools, and you should be fine. And at the same time, since it has so many functions and menus, there are a million different ways to create a circle. But in this case, I'm going to show you my way of creating things and doing things. So if you know a better or more efficient way, by all means, please use that. But if you're new to this software, I suggest that you just follow, how I use my Illustrator. So enough of that. And now, first thing first, I like to change this inner space to where I like it. I come from an older generation of Illustrator, so I like to go to Window and go to Workspace and I'm gonna use the Essentials Classic. So I'm gonna set Essentials Classic, and it's gonna prompt this additional menu right here, and that is good. Okay, so first thing first, let me look at my. Okay, what is it? So Adobe Illustrator is made for creating vector images. So on the past demo, you probably seen the difference between vector and bitmap or raster image. So raster image is what when you have, I don't have any images here. When you have regular pictures, when you zoom in really tightly, you get to see all the squares, which is pixels. Whereas vectors is all mathematically calculated. So even if you zoom in or zoom out really hard, the image quality, you don't lose any image quality. So Adobe Illustrator is good for creating the vector images. Excuse me. All right, so first I'm gonna show you how to use the most of the basic tools that we got. So most important one, and the one that students get confused all the time, is these two right here. So this one right here is selection tool, which is to select and move around the objects however you want. So you make sure that you have this selected right here, the selection tool. And also you can adjust the size of the element. Also you can rotate the element by dragging out your cursor to outside here. Notice that it changes to this kind of pointy looking thing, and then you can rotate it around. So this is what the selection tool is, and it is used to select a bigger group of big parent object, I'll say. Whereas this direct selection tool, what it does is selects things that consist of this shape right here. So if I were right now, if you click it, you see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 anchor points right here. That is what consists this object right here. Actually, it's only 4 anchors since it's a rectangle. So if I were to go to direct selection tool, notice that it only you be able to select this anchor by anchor. Whereas if I were to select here, I can't select it. It only gives me the option to resize the shape. Whereas if I were to go to direct selection tool, you'll be able to select just one anchor and then start manipulating the shape the way you want. With this direct selection tool, you'll be able to move around the objects as well, but it is better to use the selection tool to move around the object. And if things are working little, if either of these cursor is not doing what you want it to do, you can always switch back to the different cursor and try to move it around, see if it fixed the problem. Otherwise, you're gonna have to either ask me or do some Googling on that. So that is 2 tools. And the next one, there is something that I don't really use that much, so I'm just gonna skip it. And since we don't really need to use these 2. And the 4th one is pen tool, which is used for creating anchor points, and then those anchor points, Adobe Illustrator is gonna automatically connect those anchor points. So if I were to click here and then click there, it's gonna connect those anchor points. And if I were to finish this anchor point to the original anchor point, it's gonna finish and it's gonna create this whale looking shape. So the pen tool is really useful for creating something a little bit complicated. So if I were to create like what's complicated, like a car, it's not that complicated, but still, say cars look like this. Well, not quite like this, but you get the point. So to create the each anchor point is Adobe Illustrator is connecting each anchor point, and then once anchor point, the last anchor point, final anchor point is combined with the original anchor point, it converts that into a shape. So that's how you use the pen tool. But a tricky thing about Adobe Illustrator is the tools are stacked together, similar tools are grouped together. So if you were to come over here and then right click, you'll be able to see all these different options. So here there's an add anchor point tool and there's a delete anchor point tool. So what add anchor point tool is gonna add an anchor on a path. So if you move your cursor close to the path, you will see that purple thing says path. So if I were to click here, it's going to create another path, which I can go to direct selection tool and then move it around. Where if I didn't have that path, if I wanted to alter this, I won't be able to because I don't have an anchor point here. Whereas if I were to add an anchor point, I'll be able to move around like this. This is looking weird, but you get the idea. So that is how you use the pen tool. So different thing is you can always select the delete anchor point tool, and you can select the anchor point to delete the certain anchor point. So if I were to click this one, it's gonna go back to normal. If I were to click this one, this and that is gonna get connected. So like that. It's looking like a weird car, but here we go. And another thing is this is going to be your best friend whenever you're using any kind of any kind of software. Is undo. So whatever you just, for instance, you created for instance, you were altering all this, and you want to undo the whatever you just did. You just hit Control Z or Command Z if you're using a Mac, and it's gonna undo the whatever you just did. But if you undo the undo, you want to redo whatever you just did, you can always do Shift Control Z, and it's gonna undo the undo. I mean, it sounds confusing, but you're gonna have to play around and then see what it does. But Control or Command Z is going to be your best friend, so make sure that you remember that hotkey. Okay, so that is the pen tool. And next thing is this tool right here. It is more of a notice the pen tool is point by point, but this pen tool is more of a freehand drawing kind of style. No, it's more of a curved, used for curved lines. So that is pretty much similar tool, but with the curved lines. So hold on. So I want to go back to the direct selection tool because I'm going to show you the difference how you can use the direct selection tool to alter the shape. So click this, and then you'll be able to move these certain anchor points around and to make this shape a little bit better than this, because this is not looking good. I'll make it look like more like a car. Okay. Alrighty. So for instance, this is really sharp edges, and if you were to make it rounded, what you can do is you're gonna go to the direct selection tool and select right here, and you see this convert right here. If you don't see this, always go to Windows, Workspace, and Essential Classic. But here you can convert this anchor point into smooth anchor point, and notice it create this kind of weird looking thing. So this is anchor point, it remains to be an anchor point, but this too is called handles. So what it does is if you click this, make sure that you're on the direct selection tool when you're altering this kind of if you're doing like a fine tuning or altering the anchor point. If you were to move this around, you see what it does. So I'm clicking and then moving around. So this, and also I can make it wider or shorter. You can do a lot of things that you want it to do. So if I can do this kind of thing, and also I can make here a little bit. I can make it rounded a little bit here, and gonna make it slope it around a little bit like this here as well. See, it's getting better and better each time that I'm gonna leave it sharp like this. Here I'm gonna make it rounded like this. This. So that is the power of converting the anchor point into curved anchor point. Okay, so I'm gonna go back, and now I'm gonna show you the text tool. So this is very simple tool where you can just select it and then click like this, and then you can start typing text. But for this project, we're not using any text, so this I'm gonna cover it the demo for the second project, which is going to be movie poster project. So we're not gonna cover that for now. But next one we're gonna be looking at is a line tool. So what line tool does is basically just connecting two anchor points. So you can click here, you can click here and then click and drag, and you can make the line like this. So for instance, another useful shortcut that you can use is if you wanted to make a perfectly horizontal line, just by dragging, it's going to be a little hard because your hands are shaky and all that. But if you were to hold down and then, or what if you want to make perfectly 45-degree angled line? It's going to be really hard to get that perfectly. So what you can do is you can hold down the shift, then it's gonna rotate on a 45-degree increment, and at the same time, it's gonna go horizontally. Even if I have a shaky hand, if I were to hold down the shift, it's only gonna go straight, or straight top, or on a 45-degree like this. Whereas if I let go, is more of a free hand like this. Okay, so to create a perfectly horizontal straight line, you can always hold down the shift and then let go of the mouse click and the shift, and now we have a perfect horizontal line. So right now, if I were to go back to selection tool and just deselect the element here, nothing is shown. Why is that? But if I were to select this, there is something there, but it's just not shown because the fill and stroke is not assigned. So this is for the fill, and this is for the stroke, which is outline. So since it's a line, it doesn't have a fill. So even if I were to give it a red fill, it's not gonna, it does show or something, but it's not really that significant. But no, I also have a graphic glitch. So even the fill, the line, it can't have fill. So I'm just gonna give it a no fill here, but I'm gonna give it a red stroke right here, and now you can see that the red outline has been applied to this path, which is this blue line right here. So that is the path. So before we had a stroke, it only had a path without any fill or stroke. But this time on this is called path. You see the path. On the path, we're gonna give it a red stroke, and it's gonna look like a line. But if you want to make it thicker, you can select this line here, and then you can always go to this stroke option, and then say you can give it like 5, or you can give it like 10, or go crazy and give it like 60. So right now we have this beautiful line, but what if you want this line to be rounded here? What can you do? So things that you can do is you can go to window, or stroke, and then it's gonna prompt this little box right here, it doesn't show anything at this point, but if you were to click this hamburger menu right here and click show options, it's gonna bring up this advanced options. So if you look at the cap right here and then select the second one, round cap, it's gonna change. It's gonna the end of the line or the anchor point, end of the stroke is going to get rounded like this. So if you want to do that, you can do that, or if you were to do that, it's going to do that. You can play around and see what it does. Okay, so next tool that we're going to be using is the shape tool. So here we can create a rectangle, but if you were to right click, you can create a lot of different things. But a lot of students wants to create a pyramid, a triangle, but there is no triangle option, right? I don't know why Illustrator doesn't have a triangle option, but another workaround to create a triangle is use the star tool and then click one and then just create a 1 point and then it'll create a triangle. I know it's really confusing. I have no idea why they didn't include the triangle, but that is something that you're gonna have to do with it. I'm gonna lower the stroke a little bit. So I'm gonna show you how to. So rectangle, you can always create a rectangle. You can do long rectangle or skinny rectangle, whichever you want. But what if you want to create a square? I mean, yes, you can always try to make it perfectly and just eyeball it, but what if you want it perfectly square? Well, we're gonna use the shift this time as well. So right now I can just move around. It's gonna create this kind of rectangle, but if I were to hold down the shift, it's gonna get locked on to the square proportion. So that's how you create a square. Or another thing that you want to do is you can just select the square tool and just click anywhere in the canvas, and then it's gonna pop up this section right here, and then you can manually type in the size of the pixel. So if I were to size of the box, if you were to put 500 by 500, and now it's going to create a perfectly 500 by 500 pixel. Whereas if I have 500,000, 1000, and it's going to create a perfectly 500 by 1000 rectangle. So that is how you create a rectangle. And you can also do the ellipse tool, and then you can create an ellipse like this. But how can we create a perfect circle? Well, same as the creating square. You just click, hold down the shift, and then let go of the click and shift, and now we get a perfectly circle. Or you can always select this, click, and then you can manually type in the size of the circle, and then it'll create however you want to create the ellipse. So that's how you create the ellipse with the shape tool. So next tool that we're going to be looking at is something that I don't have much of experience with, but what it is that is kind of is intuitive at the same time. It could go really wrong, so I try not to use it too much. But if you were to select the brush tool and then click somewhere here and then start drawing, I don't know what I'm drawing, but this is like a kid version drawing of a hand, and something like this, and then let go. It's gonna automatically convert all that line and clean it up a little bit, and then convert to the vector image. So a lot of students like to use this because it's very intuitive and is easy to do. But if it gets too complicated, it could go seriously wrong. But I don't. If you're confident that you can keep this under control, by all means use it. This is a very strong tool. Oh yes, there we go. And yeah, so that is how you do it. Then other things is like, I'm gonna just create a rectangle. Another thing is, next thing we can use is rotate tool. What it is basically, it rotates the objects. So if you click this rotate and then click this one, and it's gonna set the reference point to here. We don't want that. Rotate. And then what's going on here? Give me 1 second. Okay, and then we're gonna select the rotate tool. make sure that you select this rectangle and then hit the rotate tool, and you notice this blue little point right here. You might be able to not see very well. That is the reference point, which means is that is going to be the center of the rotation. So reference point is here, and then I try to rotate it. It's gonna rotate using the reference point as a center. But if I were to click right here, it's gonna set the rotation reference point right here. And then if I have to rotate it, it's going to use that point as the center of the rotation. So if things are working really weird, make sure that your rotation reference point is corrected, positioned correctly. So to undo the reference point, just do that, and you can, even if it's rotation, you made a mistake and then reference points here and you want to bring it back to the center, you can always unselect this object by just going to the selection tool and click unselect, and then select it again, and then go back to rotation tool, and then it's gonna go back to the center of the object. And another thing you can do is you can always select an object and hit the click the rotation tool and hit enter on your keyboard, and then it's gonna prompt this this box here, and then you can manually type in the degree that you want to put in. So I'm gonna put in 30%, and then I can always click the preview to see what it looks like. 40%, and then 90%, like this. So that is another thing you can do. Okay, and one last thing that I think that you need to know is eyedropper. I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna create a bunch of shapes with different colors. No. Just gonna use the like this, and let's say. So I'm gonna keep it like crazy, different strokes. Red. Okay. What's going on? Oh. Here I'm gonna select red. Then here I'm gonna select it blue. So another tool that I want to show you guys is this guy right here. It's called eyedropper. So what it does is it's gonna sample the color of the element that you click. So for instance, I want to sample this color right here, and then if I were to if I click this, and then if you look at right here, which is indicates the current selected fill color and the stroke color, it's gonna copy that to both of that properties here. So since it has the black and this neon green, it's gonna convert this to black and neon green. And if you were to create like a shape, it's gonna copy that color setting. But if you click this one and then select this one, come on, unselect that. If you click this and this one, and then notice how it changes to that, and go to ellipse tool, and then create ellipse, it's gonna copy the fill and stroke color as well. So same goes for this. Even if you create different shape like a star for 5, it's gonna do that as well. So that is another thing that I wanted to show you guys. And so another thing that you need to know is how to zoom in and out. So easiest way to zoom in and out is to use the keyboard and mouse. So I usually use the combination of control or command plus alt or option or on a Mac keyboard, and then use the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Zoom in and out. I understand a lot of you uses the laptop and the touchpad, but I strongly suggest that you get a mouse or mice. I don't know, computer mice, because it's much easier to work with those. I mean, I've seen people creating amazing work of art with the touchpad, but it's just too slow and it's not very efficient. So if you have just a computer mice lying around, you might want to use that. So again, to zoom in and out, Control Alt or Command Option, and then mouse scroll in, and so it's gonna use your mouse cursor location as a reference point. So if I were to select here and then try to zoom in, it's gonna use that as a reference point and zoom in. And also, if you were to zoom in, and how do you move it around? Oh, you can always use the scroll here to move like that, but you can't really go horizontal, so you can always use the hand tool right here and then click and drag it down to see the different objects as well. Okay, so next thing that I wanted to show you is this function right here. You see the little guy right here? So it's if you hover over it, it describes what it is. It swaps fill and the fill and stroke color. So let's select this guy, and then if I click this, it's gonna swap back and forth like this. But if I click the one that is right next to it, it's gonna go back to default fill and stroke color, which is white fill and black stroke color with the 1 point. So it's gonna convert back to that, but we don't want that obviously, right? So that is the tools, and next I'm going to explain the navigation panel right here. So this, we by default you probably have a properties, but if you go to window, you can also select the things that you wanna appear on this side of panel right here. So one of my favorite is navigator. So if I were to select navigator, and you got this, so you can zoom in or select to move around as well. So I like to put this right over here. To do that, we're gonna click here and then hover it, and then you'll see that it's gonna do like this box right here. I don't want to put it in this box. I want to put on top of this. So I'm gonna move it more, and then until this blue bar is showing, and then I can put it on top of this property box right here. So if I have this navigator, it's really easy. So I can always zoom in. If I were to go back to here, I can just click and then drag and move it around easily. So that is navigator is one of my favorite. Alright, that is the photo Illustrator demo. And next demo, I'm gonna show you how to use the Pathfinder, which is a neat function in Adobe Illustrator.